The rain fell in relentless sheets over Edo, blurring the sharp edges of the narrow streets and washing away the dust of days past. Under the shadow of the sprawling city, Takeda Ryunosuke moved silently, his senses stretched to their limits. Each step was measured, each breath controlled, for he knew the enemy was close. Ishikawa Taro, the cold enforcer of Lord Matsuda, had made his intent clear: to crush Ryanosuke's investigation and silence the Ronin before he could unravel the conspiracy woven into the heart of the shogunate. The alleyways of Edo, usually bustling with merchants and townsfolk, were eerily empty tonight. The flicker of distant lanterns cast long, quivering shadows, and the scent of wet wood mingled with the faint aroma of incense from nearby shrines. Ryanosuke's hand rested lightly on the hilt of his katana beneath his kimono, ready to draw at the slightest sign of danger. Suddenly, a sharp clatter echoed from the end of the alley. Ryanosuke's eyes snapped to the sound. A group of figures emerged from the darkness, their faces obscured by cloth masks, weapons gleaming under the intermittent light. The ambush was no accident. It was a calculated strike by Ishikawa's men. Steel met steel in a flash. Ryunosuke moved with practiced grace, parrying a blow aimed at his side, and countering with a precise strike that sent his assailant staggering back. The rain hissed as it came into contact with the clashing blades, and shouts rang out, muffled by the narrow walls. Despite the chaos, Ryanosuke's mind remained sharp, analyzing each opponent's style, searching for weaknesses. But the numbers were against him. A dagger grazed his shoulder, sharp and searing. Pain flared, but Ryunosuke pushed it aside, focusing on survival. With a swift maneuver, he disarmed one attacker and used the momentum to knock another into the wall. The fight was brutal and swift. There was no room for hesitation. When the last of the attackers fled into the night, Ryunosuke leaned against the cold wooden wall, his breath heavy but steady. The ambush was a clear message. Ishikawa was closing in. The corrupt official's reach was deeper than Ryunosuke had feared, and the danger was no longer confined to whispered plots. It was mortal combat in the shadows of Edo, days earlier. In a smoke-filled chamber within the government offices, Ishikawa Taro had convened with his most loyal conspirators. The room was dense with tension, the air thick with the scent of tobacco and the silent weight of power struggles. Ishikawa sat at the head of the low table, his piercing gaze fixed on each man and woman present. "Ryunosuke is a threat we cannot ignore," Ishikawa stated coldly, his voice cutting through the murmur like a blade. "His honor blinds him to the realities of power. We will use that. Trap him where he least expects it, and let his own code be his undoing." The officials nodded, their faces masks of resolve and greed. Plans were laid false, leads to misdirect the Ronin, informants to sow discord among his allies, and ambushes to wear down his body and spirit. Ishikawa's smile was thin but ruthless. He believed victory was assured. Back in the quiet sanctuary of a small garden beneath the fleeting blossoms of cherry trees, Ryunosuke met with Kenta Moriyama. The air was heavy with the scent of petals and damp earth, a stark contrast to the dark schemes encroaching upon them. "Your caution serves you well," Kenta said gruffly, his scarred hand gripping Ryanosuke's shoulder. "But we cannot hide forever. Ishikawa will not stop until he breaks us." Ryanosuke's eyes were steady. "Then we must be smarter. Honor must guide us, but we must also be pragmatic. Every step forward is a step into the enemy's lair, but retreat is no option." Their bond, forged in childhood and tempered by shared loss, was their anchor. Yet even their steadfast loyalty was tested by the weight of the conspiracy. In a shadowed tea-house, hidden from prying eyes, Iko Hanami slipped through the crowd, her movements graceful and deliberate. She approached Ryanosuke's table, her expression masked by calm, but her eyes betrayed the urgency within. "I have news," she whispered, sliding a folded parchment across the wood. "Ishikawa plans another strike tonight. This time, it will be in the heart of the city. We must act quickly." Ryunosuke unfolded the paper, scanning the hastily drawn map and notes. His fingers tightened around the parchment as he absorbed the danger looming. "We move at dusk," he declared, no hesitation. The night descended like a suffocating cloak as the Ronin and his allies prepared for the battle ahead. Every shadow seemed to conceal a threat, every whisper a trap. Yet beneath the tension, a fierce determination burned within Ryunosuke, flame kindled by honor, loyalty, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. As dawn approached, Ryunosuke stood atop a rooftop overlooking Edo, the city bathed in the cold light of early morning. His thoughts were a tempest, but his resolve was clear. Ishikawa Taro was the enemy within the corruption that threatened to unravel the shogunate and the fragile peace it maintained. The coming days would test the limits of his endurance, his sword, and his code. But Takeda Ryunosuke was no stranger to shadows. He was the storm that would challenge them. And in the heart of the Empire's darkness, the Ronin prepared to strike. The rain began as a soft patter against the wooden eaves of the tea house, a gentle prelude to the storm of unrest roiling beneath Edo's polished surface. Takeda Ryunosuke sat in the dim corner of the room, his sharp eyes fixed on the shadows that flickered beyond the paper screens. His breathing was steady, his mind a whirl of calculations and silent prayers to the ancestors. The city was a labyrinth of shifting loyalties and whispered threats. And tonight, the fractures within the shogunate were widening with a dangerous sharpness. Lady Mitsuko entered quietly, her kimono swaying like a gentle wave as she moved with the grace of a seasoned courtier. The delicate scent of cherry blossoms seemed to cling to her, a stark contrast to the heavy tension that hung between them. She took the seat opposite Ryunosuke, her dark eyes reflecting the flickering lantern light. "The winds are changing, Ryunosuke-san," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant sounds of Edo's restless night. "Factions within the shogunate grow bolder, their ambitions clawing at each other like wolves in the dark." Ryunosuke nodded slowly, his fingers tightening around the ceramic cup. And yet, the shogun remains a silent observer. The peace is fragile, held together by threads that fray with every secret uncovered. Mitsuko's gaze hardened. "Lord Matsuda's reach extends further than you realize. His puppeteers pull at the strings behind closed doors, and many who swear loyalty to the shogun now harbor their own designs." A bitter laugh escaped Ryunosuke. "In this game, trust is the rarest currency. Even allies cast long shadows." Their conversation was interrupted by the low murmur of voices from the adjoining room. Through the lattice, Ryunosuke caught fragments of conversation-veiled threats exchanged over cups of bitter green tea. The rival samurai factions sat facing each other, their eyes sharp and calculating, hands never far from the hilts of their swords. Outside, the streets of Edo buzzed with the uneasy energy of a city on the brink. Lanterns cast long, wavering shadows that danced upon rain-slicked rooftops. Ryunosuke and Kenta moved silently along the narrow alleyways, their steps muffled by the wet earth. The weight of past battles and unspoken regrets pressed upon them, yet their vigilance never faltered. "The fractures run deeper than I feared," Kenta said quietly, his scarred face set in a grim line. "Some within our own ranks lean towards Lord Matsuda's vision, blinded by ambition or fear." Ryunosuke's jaw clenched. "We cannot afford division. If the shogunate falls to internal strife, the chaos will consume us all. Meanwhile, Aiko Hanami wove through the crowded marketplace, her slender form blending seamlessly with the throng of merchants and peasants. Her keen eyes darted from face to face, searching for the telltale signs of danger or opportunity. The scent of freshly ground tea mingled with the sharp temps of fish, and the clatter of wooden carts echoed through the narrow lanes. She paused beneath a faded banner, her breath steady despite the urgency pounding in her chest. A whispered warning from a street vendor sent her slipping into the shadows, narrowly avoiding the gaze of a pair of samurai whose intentions were anything but honorable. Back in the tea house, Ryanosok's thoughts churned like the storm gathering outside. The political landscape was a treacherous sea, and every alliance was a fragile vessel at risk of capsizing. He knew that to succeed, he would have to navigate these waters with a careful hand, balancing honor with the ruthless pragmatism demanded by survival. As the night deepened, the fractures within the shogunate became impossible to ignore. Loyalties shifted like sand, and the line between friend and foe blurred into a shadowed grey. Ryanosok's resolve hardened. The path ahead was perilous, but retreat was not an option. The dawn would bring new challenges, but for now, the city held its breath caught between the promise of peace and the storm of betrayal brewing just beneath the surface. And in the quiet corners of Edo, the empire of shadows moved inexorably toward its reckoning. The evening air in Edo was thick with the scent of incense and the low murmur of voices hidden behind sliding shoji doors. Iko Hanami moved with the grace of a shadow, her slender form cloaked in a plain kimono that belied the sharp intelligence in her eyes. Tonight, she was not merely a woman at a noble gathering, but a spider weaving her own web of secrets in the heart of the city. As she slipped silently through the corridors of the estate belonging to a minor daimyo, rumored to be sympathetic to Lord Matsuda's cause, every step was measured and deliberate. The glittering lanterns overhead cast flickering shadows on the lacquered floors, reflecting the polished smiles and painted faces that masked the true intentions of those present. Isio's gaze was steady, her ears attuned to the slightest hint of whispered conspiracies beneath the polite laughter and the clink of sake cups. She paused briefly near a group of samurai clad in elaborate armor, their voices low and cautious. From the fragments of conversation she caught, a plan was unfolding, one that would tip the fragile balance of power within the shogunate. Her heart quickened, but her face remained calm, a mask perfected through years of espionage. Retreating into a shadowed alcove, Aiko unfolded a small paper she had discreetly obtained earlier in the evening. The characters inked with precision revealed a secret meeting place and timer gathering of Lord Matsuda's closest allies preparing for a decisive move. This information was a beacon of hope for Ryunosuke and his allies, but it also painted a target squarely on her back. Later, in the solitude of her modest quarters, the weight of her double life pressed heavily upon her. The flickering candlelight danced across the tatami mats as she sat silently, her mind wrestling with the tension between the dangerous path she had chosen and the simple desire for peace that whispered in her heart. Aiko was no stranger to sacrifice. The fall of her family had forced her into this perilous existence, yet the loneliness and fear that accompanied her secret missions gnawed at her resolve. The following day, she met Ryunosuke and Kenta in a secluded tea house nestled within Edo's quieter streets. The soft glow of paper lanterns cast a warm light on their faces, emphasizing the lines of concern and determination etched by their shared burdens. Isio's voice was steady as she revealed the critical intelligence she had gathered, the hidden document that detailed the conspirators' next steps. Ryunosuke listened intently, his sharp eyes never leaving her face. "This changes everything," he murmured, a rare flicker of hope breaking through his usual stoicism. Kenta's broad shoulders tensed with anticipation, ready to act on the new information. Before parting, Aiko slipped a small, folded paper into Ryunosuke's hand, silent promise of trust amid the ever-present danger. The moment was charged with unspoken understanding. They were bound by a fragile alliance forged in shadows and secrecy. As the night deepened, Aiko returned to her solitary vigil, aware that each step forward increased the peril she faced. Yet, her resolve remained unshaken. In a world dominated by men and ruled by rigid codes, her strength was often unseen but no less vital. Through cunning, courage, and an unwavering spirit, she embodied the quiet power that could change the fate of an empire. Outside, the streets of Edo whispered with secrets, and the empire of shadows shifted ever closer to its breaking point. Within that darkness, Ico's light burned fiercely, an enduring testament to the strength of a woman who dared to defy the odds. The chapter closed on a note of tense anticipation, with Ryunosuke and his allies poised on the edge of a revelation that could alter the course of the shogunate forever. Yet the question lingered like the faint echo of footsteps in the night. Could Aiko's courage withstand the crushing weight of the coming storm? And so the dance of shadows continued, each step measured, each breath held, as the empire's fate hung in the balance. The evening air hung heavy with the scent of cherry blossoms, their petals drifting down like whispered prayers in the fading light. Takeda Ryunosuke sat beneath the ancient tree in the secluded garden behind a modest tea-house, the tranquility of the moment a sharp contrast to the turmoil inside him. His sharp eyes, usually so steady and measured, now flickered with the weight of unspoken doubts. The samurai code, Bushido, had been his guiding light since the days of his youth, a beacon that had shaped every decision, every action. Yet now, as the shadows of conspiracy tightened around Edo, that code felt both a shield and a shackle. He found himself caught between the unwavering ideals of honor and the harsh demands of survival. In a world where enemies lurked behind every smile and loyalty was a fragile thread. A soft rustling of leaves stirred him from his reverie. Kenta Moriyama approached, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the dimming sky. The scars that marked his skin told tales of battles fought and loyalties earned, and his voice, when he spoke, was low but charged with a fierce energy. Ryunosuke, Kenta began, settling beside him on the weathered wooden bench. "We cannot afford hesitation. The enemy grows bolder. If we hold too tightly to honor, we risk losing everything, our lives, our cause, and those who depend on us." Ryunosuke's gaze did not waver. "Honor is not a chain, Kenta. It is the essence of who we are. To abandon it is to become no better than the traitors we fight." Kenta's eyes flashed with frustration, but honor does not mean foolishness. We must adapt, or we fall. The tension between them was palpable, a clash not just of words, but of deeply held beliefs. Their bond, forged in childhood and battle, was tested in the crucible of their current struggle. Yet beneath the conflict lay an unspoken respect, a recognition that both sought the same end, though their paths diverged. Before the argument could deepen, a soft voice interrupted them. Aiko Hanami stepped from the shadows, her lithe form wrapped in a plain kimono that belied the sharpness in her eyes. "I have news," she whispered urgently, glancing around to ensure they were not overheard. "Lord Matsuda's men plan to move tonight. The window to act is closing." Ryunosuke stood, the resolve in his posture hardening. "Then we have no time for doubts. we must act, but wisely. Later that night, beneath the flickering light of paper lanterns in Elder Shogun's modest chamber, Ryunosuke sought counsel. The elder's face, etched with lines of wisdom and hardship, was calm as he spoke. Ryunosuke Shogun began, his voice steady. The weight of honor is a heavy burden, but it is not a cage. The code guides us, but it does not blind us. Sometimes, survival and justice require flexibility. To be honorable is not to be rigid. It is to be true to one's heart and purpose. The words struck a chord deep within Ryunosuke. He realized that to protect what he held dear, his allies, the fragile peace, and his own soul, he must embrace a new understanding of honor, one that allowed for pragmatism without surrendering principle. As dawn approached, Ryunosuke stood once more beneath the cherry tree, now bathed in the soft glow of morning light. The petals, no longer falling silently, seemed to dance with renewed life. He breathed deeply, the tension within him easing but not vanishing. The path ahead remained perilous, but his steps were steadier, guided by a resolve that balanced heart and duty. He would fight not only with the blade, but with wisdom, and in that balance lay hope for justice, for redemption, and for the enduring spirit of the samurai. The fragile calm was shattered by a distant call. The city was stirring, and with it, the shadows would soon move again. Ryunosuke's journey was far from over, and the weight of honor would continue to shape every choice he made. But now he carried it with a new strength, tempered like the steel of his katana, sharp and unyielding. With a final glance at the awakening sky, Ryunosuke turned toward the uncertain horizon, ready to face whatever dawn might bring. The air in the small chamber was thick with the scent of burning tallow and the faint, bitter aroma of ink and aged paper. Flickering candles cast tremulous light upon the maps spread across the low wooden table, their edges curling with the passage of time. Takeda Ryunosuke stood silently, his sharp eyes scanning the intricate lines that traced the city of Edo and its surrounding defenses. His fingers, calloused from years of swordsmanship, traced the paths where the conspirators might strike. The weight of impending conflict pressed heavily on his stoic frame. Kenta Moriyama's broad shoulders loomed as he leaned closer, pointing to a cluster of darkened points on the map. "They gather near the northern gates," he said bluntly, his voice low but carrying an edge of urgency. "Enough men to overwhelm the guards if they strike at dawn." Iko Hanami, graceful but tense, folded her arms, her eyes glinting with both worry and resolve. "Our spies report that Lord Matsuda's factions have secured additional mercenaries. They intend to seize the palace swiftly. We must anticipate every move." Ryunosuke nodded slowly, absorbing their counsel. The shogun's forces are stretched thin, and many officials remain uncertain where their loyalties lie. This betrayal runs deeper than we feared. Outside, the city of Edo pulsed with life, unaware of the shadowed storm gathering at its gates. Beneath the blood-red moon, Lord Matsuda Nobuyuki stood amongst his conspirators, his dark robes flowing like a river of night. His cold gaze swept over the assembled men, their armor glinting like obsidian shards in the moonlight. "The time has come," Matsuda declared, his voice steady and commanding. "Our patience has borne fruit. At dawn, we strike and reclaim what was stolen from us. The shogunate will bow to a new order." Whispers of assent rippled through the ranks, the sense of destiny palpable. Yet within that gathering lay the seeds of their undoing, a fragile alliance bound by ambition and fear. Back in the shadows of Edo, Aiko moved like a ghost through the corridors of an influential noble estate. Her kimono brushed softly against the polished wooden floors, as she crept toward a concealed chamber where she could transmit vital intelligence. To Ryunosuke and Kenta, her breath was shallow, heart pounding in rhythm with the risk she bore. Every step could bring discovery, every whisper could invite death. Reaching her destination, she relayed the latest movements of the conspirators, her voice barely more than a murmur, yet filled with fierce determination. They will strike from the north gate at dawn. Their numbers are larger than we expected. We must be ready. Kenta clenched his fists, his scarred face grim. Then we have little time. Ryunosuke, what is your command? Ryunosuke's eyes darkened as he contemplated the storm gathering not only outside but within himself. The samurai code that had guided him now demanded a reckoning. Could honor withstand the sacrifices required? Could loyalty survive the betrayals yet to come? As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Ryunosuke found himself alone atop a rooftop that overlooked the sprawling city. The cool breeze carried the scent of cherry blossoms mingled with the acrid smoke of distant fires, a bitter reminder of the chaos to come. He closed his eyes, centering his thoughts, drawing strength from the ancient traditions that bound his soul. The empire hangs by a thread, he whispered to the wind, but I will not let it unravel. Below, the streets of Edo began to stir, oblivious to the gathering storm. Yet, in the hearts of Ryunosuke and his allies, the tension was palpable, a silent vow to stand firm, to fight for justice and honor in a world where shadows cloaked friend and foe alike. The coming hours would test them beyond measure, and the fate of the shogunate would be decided not by words, but by steel and sacrifice. As Ryunosuke sheathed his katana, the weight of the battle ahead settled upon him. The storm was here, and he would face it, unwavering. But even as he prepared, a flicker of doubt gnawed at the edges of his resolve. Would the bonds of loyalty hold, or would betrayal tear them apart when the moment came? The answer would reveal itself in the crucible of dawn. The city held its breath, and so did he. The night air hung heavy with a chill as Takeda Ryunosuke crouched beneath the overhanging eaves of the shogun's palace. The sprawling complex loomed before him, fortress of lacquered wood, ornate gold leaf, and meticulously maintained gardens that whispered of power and tradition. Each stone lantern cast trembling pools of light, barely piercing the darkness that cloaked his approach. Every breath he took was measured, every muscle coiled tightly against the cold and the menace that lurked within. Ryunosuke's eyes, sharp and unblinking, scanned the wooden veranda before him. The shogunate's heart beat within these walls, and somewhere inside, the mastermind of the conspiracy plotted the empire's fate. His hand rested lightly on the hilt of his katana, the steel's cold promise a steady companion in this perilous undertaking. The Ronin's past weighed heavily, but it was honor, his unyielding code, that propelled him forward now. Moving with the silence of a shadow, Ryunosuke slipped through a side entrance left unguarded in the dim hour before dawn. The polished floorboards creaked faintly beneath his footsteps, a sound swallowed quickly by the palace's vastness. Ornate sliding doors, decorated with painted cranes and cherry blossoms, passed by as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The scent of incense mingled with the subtle musk of aged wood and ink from scrolls piled high in private chambers. Ahead, a faint rustle caught his attention. From the darkness emerged Aiko Hanami, her slender frame draped in a muted kimono that blended perfectly with the palace's muted tones. Her eyes, sharp and alert, met his with a silent greeting. She beckoned him with a deft hand, guiding him through a narrow passage that led to a concealed vantage point overlooking the grand audience hall. From their hidden perch, Ryunosuke observed Lord Matsuda Nobuyuki, standing tall and imposing. The daimyo's dark robes shimmered subtly in the lantern light, his cold gaze sweeping across a gathering of high-ranking conspirators. The air was thick with whispered schemes and veiled threats, the weight of betrayal pressing down like a shroud. Matsuda's voice was low but commanding, every word laced with ruthless ambition and icy certainty. Ryanosuke's heart thundered beneath his cloak, a fierce rhythm of tension and resolve. Here, in the very palace that symbolized order and peace, a dangerous game of shadows unfolded. The Ronin's mission was clear: uncover the depths of this treachery and strike a blow for justice, even if it meant walking through fire. Suddenly, the soft shuffle of footsteps approached from behind. Kenta Moriyama materialized silently at Ryanosuke's side, his broad shoulders cloaked in dark fabric that concealed the scars of countless battles. Without a word, he nodded toward a distant corridor where the sharp clang of steel suddenly shattered the palace's fragile calm. A desperate duel erupted, Kenta locked in fierce combat with Ishikawa Taro, the corrupt official whose loyalty to Lord Matsuda was as unyielding as it was deadly. Blades sang through the air, sparks flying as steel met steel in a violent dance of survival. Ryunosuke tightened his grip on his sword, every sense heightened, knowing that the outcome here would tip the scales of fate. As the clash intensified, Ryunosuke edged closer to the heart of the conspiracy. Every shadow might conceal a foe, every whisper could signal betrayal. Yet, amid the danger, his resolve did not waver. He was the silent blade in the night, the guardian of a fragile peace, bound by honor even as the world around him crumbled. The palace, with its gilded halls and secret passages, became a battleground where loyalty was tested and the true cost of justice revealed. Ryanosuke's eyes burned with determination as he prepared to face Lord Matsuda himself, confrontation that would decide not only his fate but the future of the shogunate. The night stretched on, the struggle within the palace a testament to the relentless shadows that cloaked ambition and treachery. And through it all, Ryunosuke moved like a wraith, a solitary figure entwined in the empire of shadows, ready to ignite the spark that might restore honor or consume them all. Yet even as the first pale light of dawn threatened the horizon, the Ronin's path remained perilous. The palace's silence was a fragile veneer, soon to be shattered by the storm of blades and wills converging in a deadly dance. Ryanosuke's breath came steady, his spirit unbroken, his sword poised to carve a new destiny from the darkness. This night would be remembered as the turning point, the moment when the shadows revealed their deepest secrets, and one man's honor stood against the tide of corruption and ambition. Takeda Ryunosuke was no longer a wanderer but a force bound by duty, ready to face the ultimate test within the palace's hallowed walls. As the heavy doors to the inner chamber creaked open, a hush fell over the conspirators. Ryanosuke's time had come. The final act was about to begin.